From the centre of the UK City of Culture 2021. This is BBC Coventry and Warwickshire.
If you're looking at the TV screens, you'll see Boris Johnson is currently meeting German Chancellor Angela Merkel in Berlin. They've just been sitting in a chair together like they were in the park bench. Now they're sort of making a press conference. Now he's expected to reiterate his call for the Irish border backstop to be scrapped. But the Prime Minister has said the arrangement to avoid a hard border after Brexit is anti-democratic and must be removed to secure a deal. But the EU has rejected the possibility of any changes to a backstop, which kind of feels like we are in stalemate, we are in loggerheads, we are at an impasse. So I was interested on this one this afternoon. I'm going to speak. This is Steve Jones, is the founder of Focal Point. Now, they are a specialist negotiation consultancy. Very good evening to you, Steve.
Hi, Rich.
Listen, I hear you all this many times on Wake Up to Money. What do the world of business make for someone who does negotiations in the business world, Steve? What do you make of the negotiations on Brexit so far?
Well, I think Harvard will be writing case studies on this for the foreseeable future, and people will be dining out on it. I've never seen such a shambles in my life, and I've seen some pretty bad negotiations.
What is it you think that they've done really wrong, and where did it start to go wrong?
Well, I think there's lots and lots of things that they've done wrong. But if you start at the beginning, if you think, irrespective of what the merits or otherwise are of Brexit, if you think what the EU wanted two potential outcomes. The first was they didn't want us to go, so they'd like to try and lock us in. So that's going to affect their negotiation strategy. And if we did leave, what they wanted is a pile of cash. Those are the two things they wanted. Would you think that's a reasonable macro assessment of the position?
Yeah, they would want some cash, yeah. And also maybe they would not want us to leave with a better deal than being in.
Well, I mean, I think they don't want us to leave at all. So that would be their best outcome. And the second best outcome is if we've got to go, they want us to stay as long as possible, pay as much for as long as possible. Mm-hmm. Now, if you were negotiating this, if this was just a commercial deal you were negotiating, what you wouldn't do is you would not allow your biggest or their biggest benefit to be unlinked from the things that you want. Because all along, the EU have said things like nothing's agreed until everything's agreed, which is absolutely fine. But what it appears that we've done is agreed we'll pay them $39 billion, but not got a trade deal tied up. Seems a bit daft.
What's the one of the things I was going to ask you is, like, you've done the high-powered negotiations. The one question I got is if you went into a garage, right, and I went into a garage and said, right, I need to buy a car today, but this car here, I want to negotiate and buy it, but I can't leave this garage today without the car. I've got to go home with the car. I have to go home with the car. I can't leave. Now give me your best price. Isn't that person just going to say, well, the price is what's on the window?
Well, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, if you think about...
Have we done that though by saying, have we done that though? And what I'm trying to do is the analogy. Have we done that by saying, well, we won't leave unless we get a deal?
Yeah. I mean, what we've done is we've got the situation where at best there was a marginal majority for this. So it's not like if 90% of the population had said we want to be out, we'd be out by now. So what you've got is half the country think it's a good idea, half the country think it's a bad idea. The problem is 3/4 of the people in Parliament think it's a bad idea, and all along they've been undermining what we've been doing. Now, if the EU had negotiated in good faith, what wouldn't have happened is you wouldn't have ended up with them having unilateral conversations with people like Tony Blair or anybody else that fancied going out there and having a chat about why we should stay in. They would just negotiate with our negotiators. That would be a good faith negotiation, wouldn't it?
Do you think they should have looked to the world of business when they did these negotiations and come and spoke to people like you?
Well, I've got to declare a bit of an interest here. I did go down to Downing Street and I had a chat with them very early on in it.
Did you?
Yes, I did, yes. Obviously, I can't discuss what the details were, but they said they had it under control. Well, I didn't think they had it under control then. I certainly don't think they've got it under control now. But I think if you look at, irrespective of what you think about Boris as well, what everybody's expecting to go scuttling out to Brussels. Well, there isn't any point, because every time Mrs May scuttled out to Brussels, they rubbed her nose in it a bit more, and she came back having given them even more money. I mean, right at the beginning, she was just going over there at their beck and call whenever they said. And one of the problems that we've got is that if you think about who's got skin in the game. The UK's got skin in the game. Each of the individual EU countries have got skin in the game as well. But the EU negotiators haven't. So what Boris is doing with, I mean, I've no idea what he's talking with Frau Merkel about, but what Boris is doing is he's talking to a country that's got skin in the game. Now, I think it was about 3 months ago, Portugal said, what we're going to do is after Brexit, whatever happens, we're going to put on a separate passport position at Faro Airport for people from the UK coming in. And why? Because their self-interest is if we stop going there on holiday, that's a massive dent to their economy. So what's going to happen eventually, if we do leave without a deal, is that self-interest is going to kick in and people will do what's in their own country's self-interest. But we've allowed them to be taken away from the conversations.
I saw a campaign recently that the Portuguese Tourist Board are running, which is saying and they were targeting the UK specifically, saying even though you're leaving the UK, we welcome you as tourists to our country. And it was like, so that's self-interest again, isn't it?
Oh, and why wouldn't they? And it was a bit like the mayor of Calais has actually come out and said, well, hang on a minute, lads, you're talking about shifting all your stuff through Rotterdam and various other ports. We're not going to block it. Well, you said you would. So what we've done is you've threatened us. We've made alternative arrangements. Now you're saying, well, hang on a minute. We didn't mean that. And that's a problem. All along what you've got people making threats. And this started right at the beginning. We had, in negotiation terms, there are things called irritators. So you've got people at the beginning saying, well, this is going to be the easiest deal in history. And if you were on the other side of that, you think, really? Well, come on then, give it your best shot, wouldn't you? That's what I would do.
Steve.
So all they're doing is they're winding them up.
Steve, always good to talk to you. Fascinating insight about the negotiations as well in terms of how the business world, and really interesting to know that you actually went down to Downing Street.
BBC Coventry and Warwickshire Travel.